This is a hearing of the Committee on Civil Rights and Immigrant Advancement. This is docket number 0351, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $36,250 in the form of a grant for the Dialogue to Action awarded by the Boston Redevelopment Authority, also known as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, to be administered by the Office of Resiliency and Racial Equity to fund programmatic activities to deepen participants' understanding of racism in historical and present day forms and foster a sense of agency to change the system through actions at individual, interpersonal, or systemic levels. So this hearing is sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu. This docket is sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu, and this hearing is being staffed by our great City Council staff, Christine O'Donnell and Candace Morales. We're going to start with opening remarks by myself, the chair of the committee. Then we're going to turn over to the administration. We'll have any councilor questions, should any of my colleagues join, public testimony, and then we're going to end. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm City Councilor at Large Ritu Lujan, chair of the Committee on Civil Rights and Immigrant Advancement. It is Thursday, July 21st, and we're here today for a remote hearing. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including their requirement that public bodies conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. The City Council will be conducting the City Council will be conducting this hearing remotely via Zoom, and it is being recorded. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while ensuring public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. The public may watch this hearing via live stream at www.boston.gov/citycouncil-TV and on Xfinity 8 RCN 82 Verizon 964. It will also be rebroadcasted at a later date. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.civilrights@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. If you wish to sign up for public testimony and have not done so, please email Christine O'Donnell at christine.o'donnell@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Public testimony will be heard after the administration and councilor questions. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. Public comment should be limited to the subject matter of this hearing. Please be respectful and do not use foul language or make threats. If you do so, I will immediately cut you off. If you are disruptive, you will not be allowed to continue to speak and will be removed from the webinar. At this point, I do not see any of my other council colleagues on the call, so I'm just going to start this hearing. I am really excited to be talking today about this grant so that we know how the city is supporting the work of making sure that our city and our departments are really operating from an anti-racist framework and are doing the work of deepening everyone's understanding of how racism works within our city so that we can improve upon it and also be proactive in addressing long-term systemic issues. And so I'm excited that we have Laura here today. Please, Chief Nelson, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Councilor, and thank you to your colleagues and all assembled. Just wanted to share, number one, our gratitude. Certainly, this has been something that we feel is one of the top priorities of the administration relative to deepening understanding, really looking at coalition building on how we begin to dismantle systemic race matters within the city of Boston. And this framework, it is intended to be done community by community and or neighborhood by neighborhood by way of a dialogue, which also encourages dialogue and then collective action, right? So not only speaking about what we know the history of race matters in the city, even current reality relative to where we are as a city and what we've been experiencing, but then to look at how collectively community and partners begin to chart out a pathway forward, whether that be by continued learning type of sessions, whether that be by putting together ways to do community impact projects. The whole goal has always been to not only continue to lift up the fact that we should be educated and informed around race matters, and particularly Boston, and how Boston has played a significant role in the story of race in this city and, of course, the nation. But then certainly incorporating and really hearing from the people we serve, right? So how do individuals, how does community then look at our current reality on racism and race matters and begin to chart a pathway forward collectively so that we continue to try to move the city of Boston forward. So that is where we are, Councilor. And I want to also acknowledge your Council President, Flynn. But I wanted to just share that as our opening statement. And that's how we would like to consider this partnership and utilization of this grant so that we can continue to plan and implement this strategic way of looking at community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, of these important conversations via education and information, and then the space allotted for us to build together, to learn together, and to hopefully shift our communities and therefore the city. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Laura. And I'd like to mention that we've been joined by Council President Ed Flynn. Council President, I'm not sure if you wanted to make any opening remarks or wanted to, but I wanted to acknowledge that you're here.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I have no opening remarks. Just want to say thank you, Madam Chair, for the important work you are doing, and Laurie as well, and the administration. Let's continue to work together. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And so I guess I have a few questions, Lori, regarding the grant. So it's $36,250 that will be used within your department to do the work of dialogue to action. Now, can you explain to us what dialogue to action actually is and what it has looked like in the past?
Sure.
So whether that work is internal or is it external?
So reverse order, the work would be external, right? We have a framework that deals with some of the internal shifting that you all are well familiar with. It is our training that we continue to do. But this would be an external initiative where we would be looking to really begin to have these important conversations in partnership with community organizations via neighborhoods and other type of partners to really begin to go deeper into these conversations, but then also hear from our residents, our constituents about their current reality, and then trying to use that as an opportunity to build something together that would continue to try to dismantle some of the systemic ways that we have faced, and some of the systemic issues that we currently face. So by way of example, I will share, Counselor, that in the early formations of the office and around race and resilience and equity, this type of concept was built with the Himes Foundation. And what we were able to do was to have trainers begin to work with different neighborhoods or community organizations that we partnered with. And they did this extensive dialogue series. And then we were able to work with neighborhoods and begin to look at what a collaborative project or initiative could look like that would begin to combat the isms that exist in that neighborhood. We were able to do this, I believe, in the Hyde Park area. Again, Council, I'm going back a few years pre-pandemic with this as an initial framework, in addition to some youth organizations that were also very interested in how we collectively look at changing our narrative on race and our voice as it relates to education and information via projects. So these initiatives became, whether it be something where a community felt they could begin to mural or look at different ways to express collaboration and unity via art it began to look like what became dialogue series, where it was more than just speaking. People began to commune together, consider actually breaking bread together and having these type of conversations, and then begin to think of how does this become part of the community framework. But by way of two examples, that again, pre-pandemic, this was the partnership that we had started with the Hines Foundation.
Okay. And can you tell me what year did the Dialogue to Action start?
The kind of pilot of this, I would submit to you, perhaps the middle of 2019.
Middle, and that's the one that started in Hyde Park?
Yes.
With the Hines Foundation?
Yes.
Okay. I'd also like to note that I've been joined by my council colleague. Actually, I apologize. And then where can residents find out more information about the Dialogue to Action program? So as it's now, Counselor, we are shifting it. As you know, my role shifted a little while back, and so we're in the process of kind of reframing it, but it will be part of the entire equity cabinet, and certainly we will be able to begin to do messaging and community type of impact work this fall. But it will be something that will be certainly available on our website, certainly via how we begin to start speaking with our partners, as partners have also raised the interest in particularly the history and education of race matters in the city, and how we can begin to change that narrative and shift. Okay, what's the total number of staff members working on the Dialogue to Action? So it will be 1, 2, 3. It will be certainly 3 staff members. I believe we will probably also incorporate fellows based on some of our partnerships, but it will be 3 staff members. All right. And are there external partners now, like there was the Hines years ago? So relative to persons who we know we have worked with around dialogues, will also be King Boston, and perhaps based on how we continue to build this out, we'd be looking at organizations like the Black Church Capacity Project that is headed under the Reverend Emmett Price, also looking at the Museum of African American History based on their historical framework and how they live and breathe this every day. And is that based on this grant right now? It's based on the grant of all of this work will be possible under the grant that the BPDA is giving, or are there additional resources to help support the Dialogue to Action? So this, Counselor, is almost like the pilot start of this. We believe that particularly some of the organizations that I just named will also be able to support us, but it will be something that we will look to do in partnership with whether existing organizations and partners or forging new initiatives and partnerships. And then I guess, what were the takeaways? I guess since this is the pilot launch, but we've done this before. What are the takeaways that we've learned from prior sessions? Sure. Some of the takeaways were around, number one, really going deeper into the historic spaces of race in Boston. That is to say, people were not aware of some of the history of the city of Boston, particularly as it relates to some of the contributions of Black Bostonians and people of color in the city, which was a wonderful starting point to begin to look at celebrating and appreciating cultural differences and what people bring to the entire framework of the city, looking at the inclusionary approach, that is that everyone brings something to this table, and learn from each other, and how do we continue to spread awareness about our differences, but that our differences combined really help us to move past hate, help us to move past these isms or preconceived notions that people may have based on learned behavior or the like, that we really saw that people were very interested in trying to understand
within themselves, and then as a community, how to get past some of those barriers. So that's number one. Number two, what we found is that this dialogue allowed for community to really continue to try to unify around a difficult topic, right? It's not easy in rooms to talk about or in spaces to talk about isms or those things or those systemic measures or systemic spaces where people have been oppressed or considered less than, right? And so the ability to bring these, what I tend to call, counselor safe spaces where people could actually have these conversations and come out feeling that they were able to have their voices heard and to some extent be empowered by way of understanding in a different way. That was the second takeaway that was very positive. That led to the desire to build community.
Okay. And are we looking to target any specific neighborhoods with the dialogue to action?
So in the initial framework, the goal was to target every neighborhood in the city. And that's why the partnership with the BPDA was crucial, because that allowed for us to have more capacity and bandwidth, because we'd be working with their community engagement team in addition to their DEI team. And so what we also realized that if we could not get to that space is that we would begin a mapping on specific areas that we know could probably learn more relative to these type of dialogues versus others. And so it's a combo of, ideally, we would be looking at the 22 neighborhoods, right? If we had to scale it back.
I'm sorry, at the what neighborhoods?
At all 22, right? If we are looking to specifically target neighborhoods that may have historically not had these conversations, or where we believe there's a need to really build upon coalition building and an understanding and appreciation of cultural differences, we would be mapping out what that would look like and what neighborhoods to start in, and then hopefully, again, build this out.
Okay. What do you think are the barriers to getting participation in the program?
Honestly, I think people could still have a hesitancy. Again, I had mentioned, counselor, safe spaces. This is not an easy topic, right? It's one that requires transparency. It's one that requires people feeling that they are able to share, whether it be their personal experience or what they have witnessed, and even around the last few years where we have seen this heightened on a national level, right, relative to racism, are these spaces where people feel comfortable. So I think one of the barriers would be, being very clear in our communications around these type of dialogues, being places where people can be very transparent and real, and that it is an environment where you would not be, attacked or anything like that. I don't mean to say attacked, but you would not feel like if you were to share something, it could be met in a negative way after. You know what I mean? Like we want to provide those type of spaces. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is the plan to do these like virtually or in person?
I would submit to you would probably be a hybrid model. Just looking at COVID safety measures and where we are. In the initial version, when we were putting this all together, again, going back to 2019, but then bringing it into our current administration and the vision of the Wu administration, we certainly want to meet people where they are. We certainly want to be in community. So ideally, we would hope to do this in person. Okay.
And then how do you plan to publicize it so that folks hear about it, can know, especially in spaces where tradition, like you said, maybe they may not feel like they have safe spaces, how do we make sure that folks know that these are happening, and what is the timeline?
So we would be certainly looking to put together a communication strategy that would really look at not the traditional spaces of how we often do our outreach, right? So how do we get to some of the neighborhoods that may rely on different type of news outlets that are not traditional, right? To spread the word, right? How do we utilize our partners, our current partners and partners in formation to use their outlets as well to share and spread the word about what these dialogues are, why people should come, and certainly to try to gain promotion and to get traction. Relative to a timeline, we are looking to perhaps consider this in the mid-fall. And the only reason why I said mid-fall is because, we'd be looking at the engagement strategy and making sure that we are in agreement on either neighborhood to neighborhood approach and or certain targeted neighborhoods that we should begin with. And of course, the third component would be relative to looking at partners and persons who certainly know how to begin these dialogues, right? Know how to begin these conversations as persons who would help us to begin these dialogues and to begin these conversations in neighborhoods.
Great. And so it's fair to say that a lot of these are still in design phase.
There's some
that this is still in design phase.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Even though we've done certain aspects of it before, this is still a pilot program.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. I'm very much interested in this and want to see this be successful. Want to throw out a comment that I'd be interested in seeing some cross neighborhood work done as well. Mm-hmm. Understanding that this is a pilot, this is the beginning, but I'd be curious to see that. I'm just checking with my council colleague, council president Ed Flynn again to see if he has any questions or comments, and if not, I think we'll be able to turn to public testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I have no questions or comments. Thank you again to you, Madam Chair, and to Larry. It's been an informative discussion. I learned a lot. I'm here to listen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And thank you, Lori, for sharing this information with us. I'm sure this will not be the last time that we talk about it. As the chair of civil rights, these issues are really important to me, especially as we are seeing a rise in white supremacy attacks and just xenophobic attacks, attacks against our LGBTQ community, as we saw at the Pride in Hyde Park a few weeks ago. So having these cross-racial discussions and talking about, how do we have these conversations that will bring people in and call people in is really important. I guess one last question I have is that you may know that the City Council is in the process of holding working sessions and hearings on the ordinance regarding creating a reparations committee. So I was wondering if how this program and the Department of Resilience and Racial Equity could help could be a support sort of during the creation of this ordinance, or thinking about the work that we have to do to repair the harm that has been done, and how these dialogues can sort of work together in that in this work.
Yep, Counselor, I think you're spot on, and even thinking about these dialogues in the earlier stages, one of the key components has always been education and information. And what I would submit is that whereas I do believe there are a number of people who are aware of reparations relative to certainly the work that you and your fellow council members have put together, but also based on some of the work that is now done in spaces like California and Illinois and other places. But I think there's still something to be said about educating on the different ways that understanding the history of how reparations into where we are with reparations, certainly the impact on those who are fighting for reparations. Again, for me, it goes back to the history of where we are as a city, albeit a nation. And I think that's where we can do a lot of collaboration. And I'm not taking away from our residents who certainly are well versed. I do think there's something to be said about the continued reminder of a history lesson, if you will, but then looking at different ways to educate and inform about how we can then help to build this out together. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I look forward to those conversations. Okay, so I'm going to turn now to public testimony. I want to thank the City Council staff for all their work in making that possible. So right now we'll transition over. I see Melissa Lovely here for, so just so that everyone is aware, I have been informed that we have 8 people signed up for public testimony at 2 minutes apiece. And so we are going to begin with Melissa Lovely. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, hello. Am I allowed to ask questions or just give a testimony?
Just give a testimony.
Okay, so based on this grant, which I fully support, it is about equality, no discrimination against racism, that I believe this is also going to include mental health as a disease. Those that have disabilities would also be included regardless of race. So I would assume that's, protecting everyone. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. This is about equality of all types. So I guess my question is, which I know you won't answer, it's not a question answer, but is there going to be some kind of disclosure that the only discrimination practice is going to be those of any race that are vaxxed versus unvaxxed, or those that choose to wear a mask or do not? Is that going to be the only discrimination policy that is going to be regardless of race that we put into place? If that is the case, that needs to be looked at in the grant, because that's not equality. That is not what we stand for. That is not what Martin Luther King would stand for. When we say that it's okay to be put in the back of the bus, when we say that we don't want anyone to be treated less than, then the grant would be null and void if that is the case, because we are treating people that are choosing over their body. If it's whether to change their gender, if it is whether to get vaxxed or not vaxxed, we would be discriminating. So I would hope there's going to be some discussion in this and have full disclosure before any monies are given for this project.
Thank you for your public testimony, Melissa. Next up, we have Michelle Efendi.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Efendi. I'm participating today to say this money should not be allocated to the committee. Each one of you is repeatedly and intentionally violating my children's civil rights. Providing you more money for programming only enables you. On Martin Luther King Jr. Day, my children and I were denied entry to indoor exhibits and then followed like criminals at the zoo. He was murdered trying to desegregate facilities and bring fair labor practices. How can the city of Boston be trusted with any money when they are not acting as an equal opportunity employer? Until now, Boston continues to discriminate against current and future employees. This proposal is for you to deepen your understanding about the history of racism, but all I've seen you do is double down on your blatant displays of hypocrisy and willingness to use the police and judicial system to target opposition. As recently as last week, Andrea Campbell, the former Boston City Council president, who's running for Attorney General on a restorative justice platform, had me removed from a restaurant in East Boston because I asked about the event's vaccine passport requirement. I ask you, Ruthie, if restorative justice is some twisted way for me as a white person today to experience the civil rights abuses a Black person experienced a generation ago. Former Mayor Janey was absolutely right when she said these movement papers were akin to slave papers. For all of you to willingly and repeatedly and publicly call me a white supremacist because I won't participate proves you are not capable of leading this committee. It proves you are not ethically or morally sound. And not only do I ask you to vote no on this allocation, I ask you to resign effective immediately.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kevin DuPont.
Madam Chair, could I make one suggestion?
Sure.
Could we ask the guests also what neighborhood in Boston they're from, just so we have a good idea?
Sure. So Kevin DuPont, you're up. Please state your neighborhood in Boston.
It is Jamaica Plain, Weld Hill Street.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I just want to say hi to Mr. Flynn. We met several years back when I worked for the City of Boston Public Works. I was power washing in Chinatown, and we had taken a picture together over there. Just want to say hi. So basically, starting a couple months ago, I don't know if this is the right forum for this, but I feel like this is a very time-sensitive issue for me, and I feel like people are not getting information right now because I'm kind of in a bubble in the apartment that I'm staying at. There's something kind of going on. All of my phones have been breached, and there's people controlling my phones basically and not allowing me to get information going out and coming in. And so I filed a police report on the issues, and I'm not hearing much follow up on it. But it's a big problem, and I need to since there's a short time, so without getting like really further into it, is there someone that I can talk to in person about this issue? And yeah, go ahead.
And Kevin, I believe we have your email. So because you signed up for public testimony, and we can make sure that you said you live in Jamaica Plain. Yeah,
55 Weld Hill Street.
Okay, we can make sure that someone reaches out to you.
Okay. I just want to remind you that my phones are breached, so the email might not get to me. So that's, I don't know. It's very difficult for me to get a hold of people because these people they've been terrorizing me, and it's not only a civil rights thing because they were never authorized into any of my devices and in my life, and they're damaging my reputation as well, and there's just it's just a really big mess right now, and I
apologize, Kevin. We do have to move on to other points of opportunity. But we do have your contact information, and you're also always welcome to come to City Hall and talk to folks. So thank you very much, Kevin.
Who would I go and see if I went down there tomorrow?
You can come to City Council, and we can see who is available to speak with you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Yep.
Also, just to be clear, we're trying to promote some people to panelists, but you need to click yes so that we can announce that you're here. So if we're not able to do that, then we cannot give you the opportunity to speak. So I see here, next up is Holly. Holly, your 2 minutes begins now. Please state your name and your neighborhood. Holly, I think you need to unmute.
All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm from Abington, and I've been working in the healthcare industry for the last 3.5 years. I began working in hospital-based EMS around the start of the pandemic in February 2020. Around December 2020, supply of new mRNA COVID vaccines were made available to the public ages 16 and up. Come the fall of 2021, those vaccines are mandated in the healthcare industry as well as other industries. In November 2021, I submitted as a religious exemption to human resources of the hospital in which I was employed, which was approved. I began attempt to research the ingredients of the COVID vaccines and found little to no info. What I did find is the recovery rates were very high for those who contracted COVID-19, as long as they had no comorbidities. I also began research on the flu vaccines to see if they were also mRNA as well. On the Pfizer website, I described that I discovered that the flu vaccines were in the first clinical trials of the mRNA. At that point, I did not feel safe taking the flu vaccines either. I also submitted a medical exemption that was filled out by my PCP in November 2021, which had been denied. I received an email from HR stating that I had until November 29th, 2021 to receive the flu vaccine. Fast forward a few months later, I was told if I did not receive the flu vaccine, I would be terminated from my job. I did not feel safe receiving it, and then they terminated me. Two private ambulance companies that I had been hired to both explained that none of the vaccines would be mandated. The first one terminated me after a month when I got a call from the VP of the company stating that they mandated it. The second company terminated me after 4 months of hire. I was taken off the schedule and was never contacted again, only to find out months later that they mandated all the vaccines.
Sorry, Holly, your 2 minutes is up. Thank you very much for your public testimony. Moving on to our next, is it Sean Nelson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you. Yes, I'm calling about the civil rights. Just like the other speakers, we have seen nothing more than discrimination coming from the government, but yet you sit here talking about you want to resolve these issues when city councils have pretty attacked citizens who speak up against the mandates and anything else they don't agree with. You call them a racist, misogynist, and Asian hate, echoing hatred. You talk like you want to resolve these issues, but when you go online in public, you attack the people who don't agree with you. I approached you about a situation at the coffee house where you purposely ignored me about injustice, where I was tackled by 5 to 10 officers practicing my civil rights to protest Mayor Wu, and you ignored me and walked off. And while your back was turned to me, I was still being assaulted by those same police officers. Right now, I do believe people like yourself in the city council who echo nothing but hatred, discrimination, but yet you have the audacity to go out in public and talk about you fight against it. All you need to resign. You're not looking.
Are you done with your public testimony?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Right now is you all need to be resigned and leave your post because you don't really help promote this city. All you do is about hatred. All I heard from the respectful young lady is this is only affecting people of color. I'm sure this would exclude white people as well, even though they have been actively discriminated out for the several 4 years right now. So I'm sure this would exclude them. So there needs to be a real conversation to make sure this includes everyone of color, white, black, brown, whatever color. And again, city council, government, you promote discrimination every turn that you get when someone does not agree with you. Yes, I am now done.
Next, we have, just want to check in with Christine O'Donnell. Do we have anyone else signed up to give public testimony?
Hello, Counselor. No, no one else has signed up, and I didn't receive any emails during the hearing.
Thank you. I want to thank you again, Lori Nelson, for joining us. We are really excited to work in partnership with the city on these dialogues to actions that will happen across our city to really center the work of anti-racism and building an inclusive, equitable Boston. So I thank you for all of your work. I thank you, Council President Ed Flynn, for showing up and for being here as always and being a partner in this work, as I know you will be not only in the neighborhoods that you represent, but throughout this entire city. Since there is no one else signed up to give public testimony, we have reached the end of this hearing, and I thank everyone for joining. This meeting will be available online. This hearing will be available online for review. A thank you to everyone for participating, and enjoy the rest of the day. Stay cool. Go to our BCYF centers if you need to cool down, and to our cooling pads across the city. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.